what are some ways the federal government can play a role in reducing inequity and improving outcomes for the 20% of America's children who attend rural schools?
You know, one of the great injustices in our society is actually how we fund public education in this country. Because it's racially unjust, and in many ways, it's obviously unfair to communities that are struggling economically. And unfortunately, because of what's happened in the last several decades, a lot of that is rural America. And so that's where the role of the federal government comes in my judgment, to support schools, particularly those that are in areas where there aren't a lot of property taxes, right? Because I think every kid in this country should not only have a quality public education, we shouldn't do things to erode public education and kind of voucherize the whole education system. We should be investing in public schools. I think every kid should start at pre-K as a right. You do a good job with that here in Iowa, but a lot of places in the country don't. And I think everyone should have something after high school as part of a public education. Career or technical training or community college. You know, last year the U.S. military said that 71% of high school graduates were not eligible for the military because of academic, healthcare, or social deficiencies. So that's a bit of a report card on how well we're doing with some of our public schools. And I also think there needs to be much more 0 to 3 programming, particularly for low-income kids. Because too often you hear these stories where kids start school and they've heard a third of the words other kids have because they grow up in a low-income family. So we have to be supporting our public schools if we want to have a civilized, progressive, advancing society, right? Because public education is really about the future. And this issue with how they're funded is really a problem. Because, you know, last year in our country, 80% of the venture capital, you know, the kind of money that invests in like the next great company, 80% of that money went to 50 counties in our country out of 3,100 counties. So 1.6% of our counties got 80% of the smart money, yet 80% of our kids live in a county where the jobs that are getting created are not as good as the jobs that used to exist. Which is, I mean, it's terrible. That's not a country of opportunity, that's a country of birthright.
Correct.
Right? That's why so much of my agenda is focused on policies to encourage people to invest in communities. Because when I'm done being president, I want 80% of the venture capital to not go in 50 counties, but to go in 1,500. I want there to be a resurgence of investment in these kind of communities. And I know how to do it. I spent my whole life doing it. Right? There are real policies that can get people invested in communities. And so while the federal government is doing things to help public schools, I want to help these economies so that the tax base grows. Right? And then that can also fuel better public education. So thank you, Betsy.
There's another part of this too, that about a third of Iowa is a child care deficit. You can't get, there is no daycare facility center in Storm Lake, a town of 10 to 15,000 people. What can we do about it?
So that's why this 0 to 3 is so important, right? Because I think of education as the kind of the pathway, right? And we think of the pathway right now as K through 12. That was actually developed in 1892 by 10 progressives who were thinking about the next century and the education kids would need. We literally haven't updated that. And I think it should be pre-K through something after high school, and we absolutely need 0 to 3 programs. And you have to be kind of means tested because, you know, at this point I want to make pre-K a right of every kid and things after high school. But 0 to 3 programs so that every kid in this country has access to early childhood education. It is absolutely the best investment we make. The trajectory of those kids changes entirely across their whole educational experience and across their lifetime earnings. The return on that investment is absolutely the best investment we make. And no kid in Storm Lake or anywhere else should not have access to early childhood education.
Thank you.